Okay, so why don't we get down to business? While you were gone, I wrote a couple of lyrics, and this first lyric is the first single. It's called Truth Matters. Looks something like this. You can pause it if you need to take a good look at that. And here's how it looked when I started. Pretty messy. But that's the way we create records. And anyway, so first thing I needed to do was write some music, and I ended up doing that. And I'll play you and show you how I did that to begin with. Okay, so let's just take a look at that and see what we got. That looks pretty bad. That looks awful as far as printed music goes. The reason for that is because I didn't play to a click track, which I normally do. This was a kind of a song that needed to breathe and needed to slow up, speed up, slow down, a little rubato. So rather than be restricted by a click track, I actually just played in the way I felt it. But of course, since the computer doesn't know to follow me, it's unprintable. So if ever I needed to print this out for somebody to play along, nothing lines up at the bar lines. It's awful. So what I did was in my DAW, I went back into it, and with this particular DAW, Digital Performer, you can just align the bar lines to the music you just played. So then everything lines up, and it looks like... So here you can see everything is lined up nice. It looks really, really good. And if I ever needed to print that out for somebody, there'd be no problem with them reading that. You know, it's got a little funky things there, but that's because I'm playing it live and didn't clean it up. I can go in there and fix that if I want to, but it sounds fine. So basically, that is what is going on, and that's how I did that. Now that it's aligned, I could actually play back to a click when I add instruments on top of that, which you're going to see in a moment. So here you can see the tracks view, and these are the MIDI tracks over here. Those are all the instruments I played in first on the piano or the keyboard, which is just a MIDI controller, and I played in all the parts that I needed to play in, and you can see what some of them are. They're mostly synthesizer things, but some percussion, some drums. Piano, timp, there's some strings. Once I've recorded them and gotten them the way I want them, then I have them recorded onto an audio track. And here's my audio tracks. All these tracks here, these are all audio tracks. In the old days, we could get up to 24 tracks, and if we wanted to record more things, we would have to take a bunch of tracks and submix them down to 2 tracks to make a stereo pair, which would open up some more tracks. So we would take, say, 5 tracks of drums, bounce them down to a stereo pair, so that would be 2 tracks of drums that are pre-mixed, but that would open up another 5 tracks for you to do some other things, which we did a lot with drums, and we did a lot of that with vocals also. But now with computers, you can have hundreds of tracks, and as long as your computer can handle it. But it's made for very lazy recordings. As you can see, there's, let me show you what I got here now. I've got violins, which is the lead violins. I got second violins. So far, so good. I have a tremolo string track, and there's nothing on there except one little thing here at the end, which is just a whole track taken up for just this one 4-second thing. Then I got adagio strings, which is another kind of string pad, cellos, contrabass, that's the big bull fiddle bass, and a second one, so I have octaves in that. And the string stem, this is, all these string tracks are bussed over. Bussing just means shipped to another track, which is like an auxiliary track. It's called a stem, string stem. So all of these, once I mix them the way I want them, get the levels the way I want, they'll all come through this track here. So I can put some reverb or change the volume or even mute the strings or whatever. I could do all of that without having to go into the individual tracks. I get a nice balance here, and then I just use this one track here. Anyway, I also did that on the vocals. Let me just show you the very beginning, just to so I'm not talking endlessly here. The very beginning of this track, so you can get a little idea of what it is. I won't play you the whole thing, hasn't been released yet. If you're one of my patrons, you already got a rough mix of it. If you're seeing this on YouTube, you would probably have to wait until it's released, but it already might be released. So check out and follow me on Spotify and other places. Join my mailing list on therealnealfox.com, and then you'll know when it's released. But here's the way it starts out. This is like pretty much all the instruments are done, but not the mix. I muted the piano here. Now the piano comes in here. Kept it nice and sparse.
I took a walk through the promised land. I saw the signs, tried to understand the broken glass beneath my feet, the broken hearts lying in the street. One sign said peace with an upraised fist.
It's kind of an interesting thing. In the old days of recording, back in the 40s and 50s and 30s, you would have a songwriter, you would have a lyricist, two different guys, you'd have an arranger, you'd have a singer who never wrote his own music, you'd have a producer, and you'd have an engineer. So that's 6 guys to come up with a recording. Nowadays, most people, or a lot of people, because thanks to the computer and MIDI and all these synthesizers and samplers, you could do it all yourself. You could be, well, actually, probably since the early 60s, and of course since the Beatles, people started writing their own songs, and they were singing their own songs rather than just writing songs and having somebody else sing it. So they'd sing their own songs, and they'd still have a producer, an arranger, and an engineer. But as time went on, and like in the mid-'80s, we got into computers, then people started doing it themselves. So now you had to have the skills of a writer, a lyricist, a performer, singer, and an arranger, as well as an engineer and producer. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot more work, but you certainly do get to have a blast doing this. So what are the most important things about coming up with a good recording? Prime importance is the song. That anybody will tell you. The most important thing is the song. After that, it's kind of a toss-up. Production, arrangement, and certainly, probably above those two is performance. If people hear a great song, but they don't like the singer's voice, you can forget about it. You know what I'm talking about? So that's those are the skills you need. So I wrote this song. I played the whole thing in on the piano. Sometimes the piano is just a reference track. It's going to be thrown away at the end, and I'll put in a different piano track. But I use that to play to with the click to add the instruments. And then I got to start thinking, what am I going to do? What kind of sounds do I want where? And I'll go over it and change it every day and come back to it, say, no, I need more of this, I need more of that. Okay, let me show you what I did with the vocals. Here we have 6 tracks of yours truly. We got 3 melodies, 3 harmonies. Left, center, right. Left, center, right. And down here, we have a sampled choir. Most sampled choirs sound kind of cheesy. This one, even though it's old, sounded pretty good. So let me show you what it sounded like first. Well, let me actually play you the whole section with the full instruments and everything out, and you'll see where the choir fits in.
All the signs that break your chains.
Okay, so that's the basic thing with all the instruments in. And what I got here is, let me first show you the part I sang all by myself without the choir. Okay, this is just 6 me's. Okay, now here's the choir all by itself. Let's see, wrong button. This is the sampled choir. Now, as far as sample choirs go, that's pretty damn good. I like that. That's believable. We're just looking for believability here. So the thing is, once you mix these two together, the sampled choir and the me choir, you get a nice blend which makes it sound like a pretty realistic big choir, like you'd have to pay a freaking fortune for these guys. So let me show you how that sounds with the two mixed together. Pretty freaking awesome. Let me show you what I did with the strings. Now here we have all the strings plus and these are all sampled strings. These come from kind of an expensive sampling program plugin, virtual instrument it's called, Vienna library. Okay, here we go. These are all the strings. And as you can see, the tremolo is not even in there until the very end of the whole song, right in there. That's our track for just this. In the old days, they would have shot me for that. But here's what it sounds like with all the strings mixed together. Violins, cellos, contrabasses. Pretty believable, if you ask me. And that's because of two things. Number one, it's a really good sample library. And number two, I know how to orchestrate like real strings. It's really important. If you just plunk your hand down and play chords on the keyboard and expect it to sound like a real string orchestra, it's going to sound like an organ. So you really have to know a little bit, just study the way strings sound and write that way. That's a whole different kind of an art. So here's what it sounds like with the strings and the choir and all the other instruments put together.
Some lay dying, a child was shot, a mother crying.
One last thing I want to show you for this particular section is some of the synthesizer stuff I was using. I've got an incredible bunch of plugins. One of the best ones is a plugin called Omnisphere 2. It's a synthesizer, but it does amazing things, and I'll just show you some of the sounds that I got out of that thing. There's some sound effects in the beginning. I also, you'll hear, I took some electric piano sounds, played a chord, and then reversed it, and that's some of the ear candy we have in the front. Okay, that's one sound plus a timpani roll. Now that the piano starts, oh, let me get you the backward sounds. I don't have those in. Backwards effects. Here we go. And then there's one more coming up. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for right now. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more, I think the next video I'm going to get into the actual mixing process and give you some tips and show you how I mixed it, and I hope to see you back then. So that's it for now. Bye.